et à tous. Merci pour cette invitation et qui m'a donné l'opportunité d'écouter des collègues, des maires, des ministres. Et c'est très intéressant d'être ici pour apprendre, plutôt. C'est une place où on boit beaucoup de choses et on apprend beaucoup. Et je m'excuse, j'avais préparé ma conférence en anglais, en pensant aussi aux minorités, non, qui sont ici. Peut-être ne sont pas beaucoup. Je n'ai pas regardé s'il y avait des écouteurs, mais alors je parlerai en anglais et mes slides sont aussi en anglais. Malheureusement, mon français n'est pas bon pour écrire. Je peux parler quelque chose et j'espère que le débat, je pourrai répondre en français. Mais du début, oui, je demande si vous n'avez pas les écouteurs, si quelqu'un peut l'amener pour être tout capable de comprendre. Si vous voulez, je commence en français. J'essaye avec les images en anglais, mais j'essaye de parler un peu de français jusqu'à la distribution des écouteurs pour tout le monde. La première chose que je voulais dire est que le concept des droits à la ville, que j'écrirai Right to the City, there, est né dans un discours philosophique, pas d'un discours légal, de loi. Et part de l'idée que les territoires sont les produits d'un conflit social permanent qui change de forme, mais il est toujours présent. Et comme ça, les droits à la ville, c'est un cadre intéressant pour imaginer la participation. C'est ça, les sujets de l'OEDP central, c'est la participation des citoyens. Mais aussi, il y a un élément en commun avec le concept de participation, que c'est le risque de se tourner une buzzword. Buzzword veut dire un mot élastique qui peut être utilisé pour dire des choses très différentes et qui en soi n'est pas nécessairement clair dans ce contenu, parce que chacun peut le tirer d'un côté ou de l'autre. Et l'autre chose est que car il est né dans un cadre philosophique et pas légal, c'est un concept qui encore n'est pas lié en Corée très fortement au cadre international de la loi. Et la première chose que je voulais demander est quelles sont les sources de ces concepts de droit à la ville. Je crois que dans les discours de Lefebvre aux années 60, qui a créé ce terme, qui a été après utilisé dans des autres contextes, il y a deux idées très importantes qui sont encore très modernes. La première, c'est l'idée que les sujets des droits à la ville sont tous ceux qui habitent et coproduisent un territoire. OK? OK, merci. Ça fonctionne? Non. OK. Qui produit un territoire, sa culture et son économie. Et ça, c'est indépendant de la citoyenneté formale d'un certain pays. Vous avez tous les écouteurs? Alors, je peux retourner à l'anglais? OK. Et un peu plus facile parce que traduire pour moi de l'anglais au français, qui ne sont pas mes langues, les deux, c'est plus difficile. So the first idea is that the subject of the right to the city are all those who inhabit the territory. independently from the fact they belong or not as formal citizen to a certain country. We call this post-Westphalian vision of the citizenship, okay? The second element is that the social production of the space of our territories is much more important than the solely action of the state, so the state actors in the transformation of places. For the rest, several of the intuition of Lefebvre has been changed a long time. For example, the word city revealed to be a danger because it seems to speak only to people in urban environments. So in the next decades, the term city has been charged of different contents. For example, imagining the city is not the city as we imagine an urban environment, but are all the places where people live independently from their size, their formal administration, and their urban or rural prevalence. Okay, so choosing to live in a place where we live at ease is today more important as the first component of the right to the city. So defining the right to the city is not easy because it's not legally anchored to an international framework, but we can try to do it as in the Charter of the Right to the City, imagining it as an umbrella right. So a right which includes several other rights, for example, individual rights, civil, political, cultural rights, which are already recognized in international treaties and charters, but also new rights and responsibilities whose nature is collective. Okay, so for example, writing to granting memory of places and urban transformation, participating in urban management, living in places ecologically balanced and sustainable. So these are collective rights. And a third dimension is that the right to the city is imagined today not only as the right of the people who are there, who live in this moment territory, but also of those who can choose to live in this territory in the future. So the new generation, the people who will migrate. So the right to the city is encompassing a large series of subjects. Some try to insert even the Mother Earth, La Pachamama, for example, in some indigenous Latin American visions, as part of the harmony we are a piece of. Sorry, no, I saw a raising hand, but it was for l'exécuteur. And so the right to the city is interdependent in relation to all other human rights internationally recognized and integrally conceived together. And relating to the sources, it's important to say that the same Lefebvre, when he elaborated the concept, was working on the idea that the urban was the novelty of that period through rural to urban migration, and so was the urban question was a fundamental part of the social question. But he gave centrality to new elements which are symbolical, cultural, and even sensorial. He refers a lot about the senses, the feeling of people in the places, the senses that you feel with your ears and with your taste. So also food and music are very important. But gradually, in his masterpiece, Lefebvre reincorporated, reembedded the role of the state. So the last book, which is there, Du Contrat de Citoyenneté, which is a collective book done with his students, think a lot about a sort of anchor, legal anchor that could be imagined through the role of the state. So the state was expelled in the first moment, but it came back in the definitions of Lefebvre of the last period. We have to remember that a big change happened in the same period he wrote The Right to the City. So the Washington Consensus, and specifically the World Bank, never had looked to the city, to the urban, as something important. It was an externality of country development. But in the 70s, with the report called Report McNamara, was at the time the director of the World Bank, the urban entered in the vision of this international institution. Is what Evelina Dagnino, a Brazilian sociologist, call the perverse confluence. No? Very different actors come to term on the centrality of the same concept. And in this case was the urban, the idea of city. And the World Bank has been very important in the 70s and 80s to introduce a new vision on, for example, on housing, in the sense that, you know, what was called at the time the twin approach, at the same time regularizing the informal settlements that were already consolidated, where people have been doing investments, and at the same time preparing infrastructured areas for future urban schemes. So this twin approach heavily influences the world, even if from an idea of minimal states, because the houses were already built by people, they were not being delivered by the state, but the state was favoring the valuing of this heritage that people had built with their efforts. And you know that many countries had been fighting against the World Bank in the 80s for not accepting the idea of having to regularize informal settlement in the place where they were. There have been a very strong negotiation at the time, and this also changed a little bit the idea of the right to the city, because it inserted for the first time the idea of informal settlements in the city of rights. But there have been other components very important in time. For example, the marriage between spatial justice and environmental justice movement, the one that discuss about racialized geographies. And so if you think about the events like the Katrina hurricane, no? How it affected more the poor than the rich. And more the people with Afro-descendant origins than the people with Caucasian origins. All this study has been part of the construction of the base for fighting for the right to the city. And these are three authors, Robert Ballard in the United States, Henry Axelrod in Brazil, and Edward Soja in the United States. They have been very important. But then the concept of the right to the city was built also through many other things, especially what relates directly to you, movement of mayors around the world, and mayors in dialogue with social movements. So in 2000, 2008, there have been the contribution of the Charter to the right of the right to the city that was built in the World Social Forum by social movement. It was adopted for the first time by a country, by Brazil. And then there have been all the work of the European Charter for safeguarding human rights in the city, where 350 European cities participate and signed the charter. There have been also other small documents that relates to single cities, but they have been very important to give thickness to the right to the city. For example, the Charter of Rights and Responsibilities in Montreal, that you can find online today in more than 20 languages, the Mexico City Charter for the right to the city, or the Gwangju Human Rights Charter in South Korea. Why this charter has been important? Because, and especially this, you see the charter agenda, which includes also action ideas, now ideas of examples and actions that can be done by mayors to implement the right to the city in different sectors of their action. Because all this charter reinforces the idea of the joint production of space. Space and the transformation of the city are the product of an integration of vision from people and from their politicians. In the World Charter of the Right to the City, enter a new concept that comes from indigenous society, for example. Concepts like Ubuntu, like Buen Vivir, are concepts that folded entire countries and populations, but they were out of a certain European-like model. And so they have been gradually entering in order to differentiate the multicultural aspect of the framework of the right to the city. And also there have been an interesting work of the peripheral local authorities. There was a forum that have been absorbed in UCLG now, FALP, and it has been contributing with the idea of solidarity-based metropolis. And today you can find a global movement of the right to the city, somehow summarized in the global platform of the right to the city, which is based in Brazil, but has different areas in different contexts. And through all these steps, the right to the city concept started permeating also the United Nations document, first of all in the World Urban Forum of 2008 in Rio de Janeiro, and then with the strong negotiation in which France and the United States were on two sides of this strong fight for inserting the right to the city in the Habitat 3 Summit in Quito in 2015. So I think that this is the story, and the story was important to understand that we are dealing with a very slippery concept, no? A concept that do not exist from a point of view of legal frameworks, but is very, very important. It can forge the action of participation. So our question here is, what can participation do for the right to the city? This is an interesting issue that I think is in two languages, of a magazine that came out recently from the think tank CIDOB in Spain, that is about the new municipalist movement and the right to the city. And I think it's a source very interesting for you, because you can find the action and stories of different countries. I put here two very different persons, David Harvey, which is a Marxist writer, and Pope Francis in his wonderful speech at the United Nations in 2015, to understand that from different vision, participation is a pivotal center of the right to the city. Pope Francis said that we have to stop doing policies as a bureaucratic exercise, and we have to involve men and women, especially those that are more at risk of poverty, in order to enable them to be dignified agents of their own destiny. Is a very nice way of defining participation in first person. And from the other side, the important contribution of David Harvey to in his article, The Right to the City, is that the right to the city is more than an individual liberty, but is a collective challenge of changing ourselves by changing the cities. And participation is exactly that. It's not only something that we do for affecting and impacting policies. We do participation to impact the actors, to change, to learn to listen, to enter in the shoes of the other, in order to come out from a participatory processes different and richer than we were when we entered in it. And that relation among the actors it's very important.
as clarified by several disciplines that have contributed to this idea of participation in the changing of territories, from the Egyptian description of Hassan Fatih to the studies of Milton Santos in Brazil. And I don't know how many of you know, but there have been in 63 the first big debate in Europe and in Northern America on the self-help, the illegal informal settlements that started from this issue. You see the cover there of architectural design that John Turner dedicated to the slums of Lima in Peru, to show how people can be agents of their own destiny for what refers to housing and planning. And here I wanted to make a difference between two typologies of participatory processes. I think that Arcon Fung clarifies well these two categories. The first he called the ontological participatory process. What is an ontological participatory process? It's a process who say, we do participation because it's healthy for democracy. So having a lot of voice in a democracy is a good thing. And that's all. And unfortunately, many participatory processes think that. But then there are the so-called consequentialist participatory process. What are those? They are processes that have larger goals, for example, social justice and redistribution, construction of new rights, and they fold participation to these goals, and they measure participation according to the capacity that it has to get this goal implemented. And these are the processes more important, and I will do an example for you to understand better. These are two cases of slum upgrading in Porto Alegre in the beginning of participatory budgeting in 1891, okay? This is on the left, the Villa Planetario. It was a slum that was reconstructed in situ thanks to the participatory budgeting, and you can see that the quality of the construction is quite low, okay? But it was important because it was the fight of a mayor who said to his own councillors, we don't have to sell this area and build the houses of these people far. Let them decide if they want to stay in the center, because many of them were working in the center with recycling, for example, and so they needed to stay in the center. All their links were there. So the mayor has to fight, because the idea of the majority of councillors was, if we sell that central area, we make a lot of money, and with this money, we will build the houses for them. No? Instead, people wanted to stay there, even in houses which were of lower quality. And in order to stay there, because there were few persons, were 99 families in a central city full of other people that did not want them, they have to create alliances. And the participatory budgeting was the place for creating alliances between all the small slums in the center of Porto Alegre, and gradually 12 of them has been restored, and you can see one of the last reconstructed in situ there, and you can see how different is the quality. What is more important there is you see that this is higher and is less dense, so has empty spaces that did not exist in the first one in Villa Planetario, because people wanted to have free spaces for parking, for parks, and they said, no, okay, we agree in living on the second and third floor, while the municipality before was scared to put people that have been living in slums so high on a top floor. And so the participatory process there was only limited to the decision of upgrading the slum. In the last example was the decision touched everything from the temporary houses to the quality of and the colors of the architecture. And that's why when we discuss about participatory budgeting, which is a tool that has a lot of different tasks, We could use, for example, this image, which is very interesting because you can see that these images show what are equity, what is redistribution, and the third image can make us think that we can respect the capacity of everyone while helping the weakest to, in this case, to see the football match. But we spend the double because to do this, we need 6 cubes and not 3. So participatory budgeting is also about discussing resources and making people understand that resources and the implementation of rights are 2 things that they have to be balanced. And I would like to finish briefly exemplifying some important components of space of participation that help to build the right to the city through some stories. The first thing that these stories tell us is that it's very important to respect all the forms of participation because they are complementary. They never happen alone. So the forms of participation by eruption, protest in the public space, invasion even of, as you can see in this image I put now, silent protests inside formal participatory process are all very important because sometimes when people continue to protest when they have a space of participation is because these spaces don't make them feel at ease. There is some mistake in the construction of this space, and so they continue to use other forms. So all these forms are an ecosystem of different forms. And in some cases, as you can see the last image about the Spanish 15M process, even protesters adopt some methodology, as for example rotation, random selection of speakers, which have been experienced in formal participatory process because they want to make them more fairer for all the participants, including the minority, which are very important. These are processes in Spain for building the accessibility plan, where a lot of people with special needs participate. But one of these places tells us a story that we have to think about. So when a member of a municipality told people we could discuss about sexuality of psychic ill people, the family said, no, this is not a thing of the municipality. This is a decision that we have to take in the families. And this risked to exclude for the second time these people with psychiatric illnesses because they were excluded from the representative democracy and for this process of participatory democracy that was in the hands of representatives of them and not themselves directly. And this can happen a lot with children. Unfortunately, many of the processes that involve children in planning, for example, are choreographic. At the end, the things they say are not implemented. And this is often because I have been working in Rome in a process like this, and the final decision of the mayor at the time, I'm talking about 15 years ago, was no, we don't do what the children say because the parents are against, and the parents are those that vote. So it's very important to commit with young generation in listening to them. This is a process in the island of Reunion, a French region between Mauritius and Madagascar, that's where there is a community who lives in a volcano, and they need like 20 hours of walking to reach the others. So in the participatory budgeting of Saint-Denis, they were brought by an helicopter, some representative, because it was the only way to make them dialogue with the others. So there was an attention. This is the same in the small island of Venice, in the right of this image. And this is a process about the last of the last. This is a process of participatory budgeting in the prison of Bolate in Milan that started 2 years ago. And the idea was that a lot of money flow in the prison in many cases. Okay, a lot of money flows in the prison, but normally this money arrives for projects that has not been discussed with prisoners. And they do not interest them because they don't change their life. So the process of participatory budgeting that made vote more than 1,200 prisoners was very important for that. Another element is art. Using art in the participatory process, because art can prefigure things for the future, but also can give clarity to discussions like, for example, on exclusion. This is a mattress created by an artist in order to overcome the excludent benches created for avoiding that slum people, street dwellers can sleep there. The right to the city is also changing name to be more correct to the people that we are dealing with. And this is a very interesting project on which there is a report created by UCLG, very interesting, in Bogota, of street dwellers. They were not called homeless, because homeless means that you miss something, you don't have the house. But many of them was discovered that have chosen to live in the street, not because they were poor, but they have traumas in their family, in their work, and they decided to go out from society and to live in the street. And so in this program, beyond changing all the language and compelling also the civil servant to this new language, they use a lot of art in order to recreate a relation between people sleeping in the street and the dwellers of the houses in the same streets. And in the end of the project, in the end of the process, the street dwellers were not given only the opportunity to have a house, but to choose between having a house and sleeping in the street, but in another way, taking care of the street as part of it. Naturally, this program was challenged by the town planning department. This was a project of the social affairs department, because in the town planning vision of the city of Bogota, these people were lowering the values of the houses. And so it's very important to decide on which side are we. So when we talk about the right to the city and the action, we must interrogate ourselves from which perspective you are watching to the problem. These are the Museum of the Favela in Rio de Janeiro, which is a place created in order to remember the fights of slum dwellers for surviving. And these are something very interesting that in the United States and in Switzerland has been somehow institutionalized. They are called Citizen Initiative Review. They are panels of people random selected to create for the other citizen the basic information about all the referendums. Because in the referendums, many cases, as in the left case, if you have more money to pay your publicity, you win. This is the case of Proposal 22 in California last year. Uber had 200 million to pay publicity, and they won a referendum for the definition of worker rights. So it's important also from the state, from the municipality, to contribute for this. I pass this, and I think it's important also to measure differently. You know that there are many things that goes today, many indicators that goes beyond the vision of the GNP simply. And so, for example, the World Happiness Index is one of them. This is a work done in Australia, in the city of Port Phillip, that used citizens to create a diagnostic of the social differences in the territory, analyzing prices. But it's also important to invest resources in participatory process that can help the citizen to have protection from the dangerous aspect of nature. And here is in Luinja, in RDC, a program, I think it was in the participatory budgeting, to reforest a hill in order to protect the people. Finally, I think that we have to reflect on co-design, because co-design of participatory processes, including the co-design of the rules, is a very important way to make people confident in the process, because the rules has been set with their presence, so they are not given top-down. This is the case of Wuppertal, and this is a case of Cascais, in which some cameras have been put to analyze, to allow people to participate of the monitoring of the implementation of participatory processes result. This element has been strongly used by social movements, for example, here in Taipei, during the revolution of sunflower. And another thing that is very important, and in Italy now we have a network of 234 municipalities that work on, they have a ruling document on citizen pact. They created pact for the management of places or services. In Bologna there are 550 of this pact active in this moment. And they also, when you propose a thing in the participatory budgeting and you propose also to organize a pact from the municipality and social groups, you can get a reward in participatory budgeting, having more chances to win, because you are helping the municipality in implementation. And I finish quoting another area that is very important, which is housing. This experience have been spreading. Now you call in French, I think, organisme foncier solidaire, called community land trust in English. And they are a way to put the attention to the price of a land together with a resident control of buildings through cooperative ideas. And this type of action are very important because they reduce the cost of housing, working on the idea of operating on land. And I think I will finish here because my time is gone, but possibly other things will emerge also in the debates we do. Thank you very much indeed. I wanted to finish with this sentence of Eduardo Galeano: the only thing that you can make from up to down are holes. So,
merci beaucoup. Merci. Applaudissements pour Giovanni Allegretti. Vous aviez le casque. Bon, le temps qui lui est imparti, on va dire, reste 7 minutes. Donc, à la limite, juste une question. Hein, juste une question, une intervention très brève. Voilà.
Non, c'est juste, merci. C'est juste pour donner une précision à tout le monde. Qu'est-ce que vous entendez par droit à la ville? Merci.
Can you speak French? Can you explain in French? Yeah, then go on.
Bon, ça c'était mon début quand vous étiez à prendre votre écouteur. Alors je répète que l'idée de droit à la ville, c'est une idée plutôt philosophique que légale, donc du monde du droit. Et c'est le droit de ceux qui habitent dans un territoire, indépendante de sa citoyenneté formelle. On peut avoir des migrants, on peut avoir des enfants qui ne votent pas, mais qui ont le droit de discuter, de construire le changement de son territoire. Et je dis territoire parce que le droit à la ville est né en relation à la ville, mais il s'applique aussi à des territoires avec une typologie différente qu'elle est urbaine. C'est un droit d'avoir droit qui réunissait en même temps des droits consacrés dans les documents internationaux, mais aussi des droits collectifs qui regardent l'environnement, la participation populaire à la gestion du territoire et des autres droits qui sont plutôt collectifs et de type nouveau en relation aux droits consacrés.
Alida.
J'espère que mon français soit compréhensible. Hein? Je dois les redire en anglais aussi? Okay. So, the right to the city, which was born within a philosophical environment, not linked to rights, is the right of people who live and build a territory. That means that it is independent from the formal citizenship that these citizens have. And the right is the right to be active part of the construction of the territory and the solution and the policies for the improvement of their quality of life. So it puts together individual rights already consecrated in international treaties with new collective rights like the right to a healthy city environment, the right to participate in public management, and other rights more collective and linked to sustainability.
Merci. Moi, c'est Nyang Ibrahima. Je suis le coordinateur national de l'Association des communes mauritaniennes du Sud. J'ai bien écouté le conférencier et par rapport à la question des maires, je suis allé dans ce sens. Je voulais un peu avoir plus d'éclaircissement par rapport au droit à la ville. Droit à la ville, qu'est-ce qu'on entend? C'est clair. Je voulais savoir un peu quelles sont les actions envisagées à réaliser quand on parle du droit à la ville. S'il y a des exemples. Deuxième question, c'est les images de votre projection montrent un document sur le contrat de la citoyenneté. Quel rapprochement à faire par rapport au droit à la ville? La troisième question, est-ce que le droit à la ville ne doit pas prendre en compte le droit foncier? Merci.
Merci beaucoup de votre question. Je sais déjà, parce qu'on a parlé ce matin, que le prochain conférencier, Yves Cabane, va mettre l'accent sur ça, qui répond exactement à votre question. Alors, je pense qu'il peut répondre à votre question avec plus de temps là. Et j'ai vu une autre main là. Ah non. Okay. Ça va? Ah, ok. Non. Ok. Non, c'était 45 minutes parce qu'on a commencé à 45. On a commencé ici. C'était 45. Ok. Non, pas.
Merci. Oui. Merci, M. Giovanni. Merci au maire Yassé qui a posé une vraie question sur le droit à la ville. Mais ce que je retiens dans votre réponse, vous avez parlé du droit de construire un territoire autonome. Et je me rends compte que dans votre présentation, vous avez présenté des enfants de la rue. Et si je m'en tiens un peu à votre réponse, à la suite de la question du maire Yassé, c'est comme si ces enfants de la rue ont le droit de pouvoir se construire un territoire, avoir des normes dans la cité. Est-ce qu'ils ne sont pas des marginaux? Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas de risques à promouvoir ce droit à la ville? Je prends l'exemple du cas des enfants microbes. Les enfants appelés typiquement enfants en conflit avec la loi. Leur gestion. Malgré tout ce qui est mis en place par l'État et les municipalités pour pouvoir contenir et les resocialiser, si ce droit à la ville leur permet de pouvoir vivre dans leur milieu d'enfants de la rue parce qu'ils se sentent en sécurité dans ce milieu-là, est-ce que ce n'est pas un danger pour les collectivités territoriales? Je suis élu de la commune d'Atekoubé. J'aimerais avoir un peu votre avis sur ce point-là.
Bon, j'ai apprécié beaucoup la provocation parce que je crois que ce qui est important d'introduire la participation comme élément fondamental de la construction du droit à la ville, ce n'est pas de laisser les choses comme elles sont, mais de transformer les acteurs. Et alors, pour exemple, le programme que j'ai cité ici, de Bogota, des Street Dwellers, c'est un programme qui forme les habitants de la rue, ceux qui habitent dans la rue, pendant longtemps. Il lui donne les possibilités de choisir des différentes manières de retourner à vivre dans la société. Une de ces manières, c'est avoir la possibilité d'avoir des maisons, de construire des maisons collectives ensemble. L'autre, c'est de rester dans la rue, mais avec une relation complètement différente avec les autres personnes qui habitent la rue, les habitants des maisons. Alors, c'est mettre la participation au centre du droit à la ville, c'est jamais laisser les choses comme elles sont, c'est donner des opportunités aux citoyens à travers de la formation, à travers de la co-formation, de changer sa manière d'habiter l'espace. Alors, je ne crois pas que les enfants que vous parlez, après un programme qui les a involucrés avec l'art, à travers des différentes manières de construire son identité, va être la même d'avant. Alors, je crois que l'important, c'est les valeurs pédagogiques. Et il y a un réseau très intéressant des villes, dans le monde des villes éducatrices, ICE, où les villes interchangent des différentes stratégies qui ont pour éduquer la population dans des façons différentes, ou co-éduquer avec le mouvement social, les organisations de la société civile, les citoyens, pour sortir différents et pour faire que l'espace soit un espace pour tout le monde et pas un espace dominé par quelqu'un qui l'utilise à sa manière sans tenir compte de l'existence des autres.
Merci beaucoup. C'est M. Jean-Michel Mvondo, je viens de la République démocratique du Congo. Je voudrais, Giovanni, que tu puisses faire les liens entre le conflit lié à la terre et les droits à la ville. Pourquoi je pose cette question-là particulièrement en Afrique centrale et particulièrement la République démocratique du Congo, le conflit armé fait en sorte qu'il y ait d'abord un grand déplacement massif de la population, le mouvement de la population qui fuit les atrocités dans le milieu reculé, et ils viennent tous s'entasser dans les centres-villes. Alors, et là, le problème des conflits fonciers s'impose. Aujourd'hui, si vous allez dans nos cours et tribunaux, parce que je suis avocat aussi, près de 75% des litiges au tribunal, c'est lié au conflit foncier. Alors, je voudrais savoir comment on peut faire les liens entre ces droits et les conflits qui continuent à persister. Et nos autorités aussi sont à la base de cela parce qu'ils vendent des terrains, ils créent des concessions sans tenir compte des documents que les citadins possèdent. Alors, je voudrais savoir si ce n'est pas un obstacle à ces droits à la ville. Comment faire les liens?
Bon, votre question, c'est très complexe parce qu'il regarde un sujet qui n'est pas qu'un sujet seulement lié à l'actuation, à l'intervention des pouvoirs locaux. C'est un sujet qui a beaucoup à voir avec le droit à la propriété, non? Et alors, ce n'est pas un sujet qui peut être traité à un niveau. Il a besoin d'une gouvernance multiniveau. Mais l'histoire du Brésil pourrait être intéressante dans ces cas. Dans les années 90, il y a eu un mouvement de maires qui ont commencé à expérimenter ce qu'on a appelé zones d'occupation prioritaire dans les territoires. Ce sont été des zones qui sont été marquées après une discussion aussi avec les citoyens qui sont été coupées dans les plans d'urbanisme. Et l'idée, c'était que dentro de cette zone, que c'était des zones vides, avec beaucoup de vides urbaines, des terrains vagues, qui avaient des propriétaires, mais les impôts augmente en proportion au temps qui est utilisé pour laisser inutiliser cette zone. Alors l'idée c'était que ça sont des zones importantes parce que sont dans les centres, sont des zones proches à l'urbanisation primaire et secondaire, proches au réseau d'eau, de gaz, d'électricité. Il est important qu'ils soient des zones utilisées pour les pouvoirs privés aux communes publiques pour récupérer la forme dense de la ville, parce que construire en périphérie est beaucoup plus cher qu'utiliser une zone où les réseaux sont déjà faits. Et alors, ces municipalités ont essayé de mettre des impôts différenciés, proportionnels au temps d'inutilisation de cette zone. Et au début, il a fonctionné aussi bien qu'à la fin, il a été enregistré dans la loi de 2001 sur les droits et sur les statuts de la ville du Brésil. A été un peu réduit les valeurs de croissance des impôts avec le temps d'inutilisation, mais je crois qu'il est possible, avec des expérimentations à niveau local, fédérées dans les associations de maires, d'obtenir quelque chose qui a besoin aussi d'un mot final de l'État, parce que ça touche des droits qui sont consacrés dans la loi nationale, non, et dans les codes des droits publics et privés. Et c'est une réponse partielle, parce que votre question, c'est vraiment très difficile. Et aussi la situation que vous avez décrite, c'est une situation spécifique qui est liée à un conflit. C'est un problème, par exemple, en Colombie. Il y a des zones de Nariño qui ont un problème pareil au vôtre.
Voilà, merci. Tout à l'heure, quand Michel le maire de Cocody a posé la question, quel sens vous donnez à cette notion de droit à la ville? Je pense que vous avez entamé par dire qu'elle tenait beaucoup plus à la philosophie qu'à des questions de territoire. C'est-à-dire une ville a sa définition. C'est l'accès à l'éclairage public, l'accès à l'eau, l'accès à un espace de divertissement pour les enfants, c'est-à-dire les conditions qu'il faut pour effectivement on puisse vivre réellement en ville. Je pense que la notion de droit à la ville, c'est plutôt ça. Et quand vous articulez à la participation, à la démocratie participative, à la participation citoyenne, ça veut dire que quand on doit construire une ville, on doit pouvoir interroger les citoyens sur quel type de ville les citoyens veulent. Parce que de plus en plus, quand vous allez dans nos villes, cette décision effrénée de construire l'habitat fait qu'on n'a plus d'espace de jeu pour les enfants. Ces enfants, tout à l'heure, quelqu'un d'autre a parlé des enfants de la rue. Mais à la réalité, si nos villes avaient été conçues pour qu'on puisse avoir des lieux de refuge pour ces enfants-là, pas de refuge, mais des lieux là où ils peuvent dormir quand la nuit tombera, je pense que ce sont ces questions-là qui envoient beaucoup plus à la question de droit à la ville. Parce que c'est beaucoup plus ça. C'est-à-dire on a des villes aujourd'hui qui ne répondent pas véritablement aux préoccupations des citoyens en termes des droits élémentaires, droit à la santé, droit à l'éducation, droit à la lumière, à l'urbanisation, à de l'eau potable. Donc tout cela font partie des choses qui déterminent une ville. Et donc dire droit à la ville, c'est en même temps dire droit à ces choses-là. Je pense que à notre avis, c'est beaucoup plus ça. Parce que sinon, la notion de démocratie participative à ce niveau-là, peut-être que la gestion foncière et tout ça, c'est des choses qui viennent après, mais je pense qu'à ce niveau-là, véritablement, c'est les éléments constitutifs d'une ville qui véritablement renvoient à la réponse que vous devriez, à notre avis, donner au maire.
Oui, ok. Ma réponse, c'est que vous avez totalement raison. Moi, j'ai considéré cet élément déjà garanti dans la partie des droits individuels à l'eau potable, qui sont partie des traités internationaux aussi. C'est pour ça que je l'ai mise à côté. Mais c'est vrai qu'il y a des lieux où ça sont la première chose que tu dois regarder parce qu'ils sont encore pas garantis aussi s'ils sont consacrés dans des documents internationaux sur les droits individuels ou collectifs. Je suis totalement d'accord avec vous que ça, c'est les premiers passes. Mais je l'ai donné comme inclus déjà de la partie des droits individuels, mais on est parfaitement d'accord. Merci d'avoir éclairé ça parce que c'est important, la vision stratégique de la ville. Et le COVID nous a apporté une ville différente, nous a apporté des demandes différentes d'espaces qui n'avaient pas. On discute beaucoup de la ville de 15 minutes, non? Tout doit pouvoir être fait dans 15 minutes autour de nous. Et ça n'est toujours pas possible dans notre ville qui sont déjà consolidées. Et la ville de soins, qui est appelée comme ça. Aujourd'hui, cette année, sont sortis 4 ou 5 livres sur la ville de soins, que c'est une ville qui est plus attentive aux relations qu'à la construction de l'espace. L'espace doit être construit autour des relations humaines, d'une reconstruction des relations humaines, relations qui ont besoin, après le Covid, peut-être des espaces, des dimensions, des distances différentes par rapport à ce qu'on était habitué. Mais merci beaucoup.
Merci. Applaudissements pour